Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'll be sharing ghost stories from Pennsylvania. Let's get into it. Story 1. We've had a history of living in houses with strange occurrences, so many that we used to think, was it us or the house? But it's been house after house of supernatural experiences. I have come to think, for now, it's the houses, not us, that are haunted. One reason I believe this is because in 2016 we were seeking help from a team of exorcists, priests, and lay people in that field as we were having a lot of issues with one home. A woman with paranormal abilities we consulted, who referred to herself as a seer, told us it was not us, but the houses. We had been living in a very active house that to this day is difficult for me to talk about and changed me and our family forever. We did move, thankfully, to spiritually safer locations. More recent houses we lived in did have suspicious activity, but I questioned things, and I am very skeptical. From 2017 to 2019, we lived in a house built in 1901. You just gotta wonder about all the history of these turn-of-the-century beauties witnessed. Loved the house, but it needed work. A month after moving in, my son Tom, who was 13 at the time, had an experience that jarred him. He was in middle school, which had an early bus pickup time. The routine was he got up just before 6 a.m., he'd eat, dress, get ready. Point being, he'd be fully awake. I'd help him gather his things, and I would then go back to bed before I had to start getting his siblings up for grade school bus. As soon as I laid back down, my son came running up the stairs and jumped into the bed with me in distress, screaming there was a ghost downstairs. My big boy was white and shaking, clearly upset, hysterical. At first I thought he was joking, but the more he went on, I realized he wasn't joking. He said he went to the living room and saw a shadow man close to 6 feet tall, all in black, standing in the middle of the room, looking at our record player, which was one of those newer models that are designed to look old. They are brown and boxy with that fake antique look. Anyway, the shadow man was looking at it and then eventually walked into the record player and absorbed himself into it and disappeared. It didn't bother or engage Tom, but still, the trauma of our earlier house that things were very bad with, my son had a panic attack at the mere sight of another possible ghostly form. Logically, I thought maybe it was a real man who broke in, and maybe he was hiding near the record player, crouched down. I went downstairs, turned all the lights on, and did a search of the rooms. Nothing. Meanwhile, Tom was literally terrified. I kept saying, "Are you sure it wasn't your brother?" "No." "Are you sure you didn't imagine it?" "No." "Are you sure you didn't fall asleep and dream it?" "No." Tom never saw it again, but he still feels what he saw was real. No one else in the family ever saw anything else while we lived there, although my husband swore he heard voices and footsteps in the hallway on several occasions. I also think I heard footsteps coming up the stairs and down the hallway on several occasions, but I guess you could say I just didn't want to allow myself to entertain the reality of that. I suppose it's the possibility that Tom was having a flashback of sorts, or it's also a possibility that something followed us from the previous home, or even something that was attached to our then 1901 home. In 2019, currently, we moved again to a rental house built in 1940. It's nice, but it has a lot of stairs. There are a series of cement steps and landings from the street to the house. I didn't want to move there because of the steps. I joked saying there's so many steps it's enough to cause a heart attack. Our landlord half laughed, but said one of his workers and painters, when preparing it, was walking up and had a heart attack and died inside the doorway at the foot of the staircase. So terrible. Because of several obligations, one being my elderly relative is in walking distance a few houses down and in need of constant care, we agreed to move in anyway. A few days after we moved, junk mail addressed to the previous owners came. They had an unusual name, so I decided to Google them. An article popped up saying the man who lived here died in the home. He was in his 30s, a father, Loved history reenactment with costumes. The picture on the article showed him standing at the bottom of our staircase. There were costume hats hanging on the wall behind him in a decorative pattern. I looked at the wall and there were holes there where the hats had been hanging in the picture. That kind of gave me the willies when I looked at the photos. Just something about it gave me a connection to the person, and I felt like I could sense him. The next day, kids at school, I'm home alone and I see a ball explosion of blindingly white light in the spot at the bottom of the footsteps. I just stared at it and thought, did I just see that? Oddly, it was right at the same spot that I saw a previous owner standing in the photographs. I'd say it lasted a full 5 seconds. Over the next few days, early mornings, I'd see a smaller, quicker 2 to 3 second version of the same thing, a flash of white light in the same spot, but smaller and fainter. After the first month, I haven't seen it again. Is there a plausible explanation? Could it be an electrical issue? There are no outlets in that location. I'm looking for plausible other possibilities. If it was something, was it the man who lived there? Or the worker who died in the home? One of my daughters, Sylvie, was very affected by spiritual activity in previous houses. In one home, there was a thing in her closet, a shadow man. That experience has traumatized her to this day, so the topic is very sensitive to her. She came to me recently and said she thinks this house has something in it. I try to reassure her with logical things she is experiencing. I'm still unsure if she is imagining things, still traumatized by early experiences. We have talks often of how much the shadow man has affected her. For her, it's on a level of terror that we have to see therapists. So it's really hard for me to discern if it could be happening again or just a replay in her mind of the prior past incidences. Mostly, she says, with this house, it is in the basement. Her chore, which she really loves, is laundry. She loves to wash and fold everyone's laundry and finds it relaxing with the clean, fresh lavender oil scents. So she will go alone to the laundry room in the basement. Here, she says something touches her from behind, touches her hair and shoulders. She does not like it or find it cool. It bothers her a lot. She says doors open down there and she hears footsteps. I tell her to pay it no mind, but that's more out of reassurance. I'm not sure if it's real or not. I guess I don't want to believe it. Could she be reimagining it from prior trauma? We talk openly about it, and mostly I just want to think that no matter what, I'll protect her and she will be okay. I'd like to hear theories about it. Story 2. This happened to me a couple of months ago. I was with my friend, and around 10 o'clock, her stepmom asked if we wanted to go to a graveyard. We said yes and got in the car. We drove past a couple of graveyards before going to one a couple of miles away. Once we got close to the graveyard, we noticed we were being followed by a car. We decided to drive around the block to see if we could lose the car. After a while, the car disappeared, and we went back to the graveyard and pulled in. We got out and noticed a fresh grave. After being there for about 5 minutes, we saw something on the hill and decided to leave. We got in the car. We were about to turn out of the graveyard. We then heard what sounded like a chainsaw, and the car stopped. On the touchscreen in the car, a message started flashing. It said something like power connection failure. My friend's stepmom had just got the car, and it was brand new. She tried changing the song and putting it in park, but the car wouldn't start or stop. After a couple more seconds, the car started again. We left quickly, and we were all freaked out. It was now like 12 o'clock. When we got back to her house, we decided to use her spirit board. Nothing happened until the planchet spelled out graveyard. We then said goodbye and were very freaked out. We still don't know if the car thing was related to the graveyard or if it was just a malfunction. We were still freaked out. I think the car incident was paranormal, and I think it has to do with the fresh grave. But what do you think? Just thinking about it and writing it makes me feel a lot of negative energy. I need help. Story 3. When I was just a little kid, my older sister and I would always stay over at my grandparents' house. At that time, I was only 5 and she was 7. I had another sister, but she was too young to sleep over. Anyway, whenever we slept over, We had to share a room and the bed. The room that we stayed in was on the second floor next to a bathroom in my grandparents' bedroom. To a normal person, the room would seem off. There wasn't anything wrong with it. The first time my sister and I slept over, like I said, I was 5. Some say that I was too young and don't remember it too well, or that I just made up what happened. I thought that too until my mom gave birth to another daughter. Then 7 years later, she starts to sleep over at my grandparents' house, but not in the same room, since I would always end up waking everyone in the house up by screaming. My grandmother blocked the room off from the rest of her house after I told her about the shadow right behind the light. Now you might be wondering what happened or what shadow. Here's the story. My older sister and I were getting ready for bed the first night over at our grandparents' house. We were so excited but also nervous because it was our first sleepover. Anyway, time passed by quickly and we were all tucked in bed. Our grandfather went to bed early while our grandmother stayed awake. On the other hand, we couldn't fall asleep. After staying up and talking for a few minutes, my sister grew tired even though she was wide awake. Another minute passed and she was asleep. And just like that, I was alone. I rolled over to get more room on the bed, but I ended up frozen. I saw the lamp. It was a tall lamp in the room, and light shined in on it from the window. But that wasn't what made me freeze. There was a figure, or as I like to call it, Shadow Man. The Shadow Man wore a top hat, and that's all I could make out of the figure. I stared at it for what seemed like an eternity, and yet it didn't move. So me being a kid, I thought it was just a shadow from the window shining inside the room. But I was wrong. Right as I was about to turn back over to face my sister, it moved. The Shadow Man was moving towards me, so I did the only thing a 5-year-old would do at a time like that. I screamed, and it went away. I don't know where it went, but it was gone. Of course, my whole family woke up and came into the room. Then I realized it wasn't just 9:30 p.m., it was 4 a.m., right on the dot. This went on every time I slept over, but then I got older and it stopped. That's when my grandmother shut down the room. Now I'm 16 and I still see the Shadow Man in my nightmares, so I do ponder if it was real or not. But one thing is still off about it all, because every once in a while, everyone in my house will bolt up at 4 a.m. and we all don't know why. What I do know is whatever the Shadow Man is, it isn't good. Story 4. I was preparing dinner tonight before my girlfriend came to my place. In the corner of my eye, I saw her walk from my dining room down to my bathroom. As this figure, who I thought was my girlfriend, passed me, I said hello. She turned, or it did, and looked at me and walked by. After a minute, I went back to check on what I assumed was my girlfriend. There was no one in my room or bathroom. When I got to my son's room, there was an extremely cold draft passing through me, so I stopped and decided to turn around and go back to cooking dinner. I was so bewildered, I wanted to leave my dinner and everything just to get out of my apartment and not go back in. To make matters worse, as soon as I walked into the kitchen, my girlfriend texted me and said she would be 15 minutes late. This is not the first time I saw a shadow person or ghost here. I'm just concerned now because it's the first time it decided to take a human form. Should I be concerned? I'm going to sage my apartment tomorrow. Is there anything else I should do to this apartment? My concern is whatever this is trying to make contact with my son. He is 9 years old and is on the spectrum. He's entirely too trusting when it comes to anything. He told me about the old lady in the apartment he sees, which I believe is my girlfriend's grandmother, which is weird since she lived in Alabama and I never met her or saw a picture of her. After I described the old lady ghost to my girlfriend, she said she saw her grandmother here also. I'm lost on what to do. Story 5. So before you know what happened recently, you'll need to know this. My grandfather was crazy into witchcraft voodoo. He used to draw pentagrams on the basement floor, put my aunt, uncle, and mom inside them, perform spells on them, and then throw them all in a closet. He used to call himself a wizard, and I think that it has affected all of our lives tremendously. My mother ended up passing away very suddenly in her 20s. My uncle is very unhealthy, and my grandmother became a paranoid schizophrenic. Yesterday was Halloween. I woke up at 2:30 a.m. in a horrible sweat in the middle of a panic attack. I was having a dream that demons were trying to get me to let them into my soul, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about it. This was not sleep paralysis, as I could move, but I could not get the thoughts out of my head. Then I saw a dark shadow in my closet, and I couldn't fall back to sleep for hours. Fast forward to 2:30 p.m. that day. I just got out of the shower and heard a loud bang on the wall. The radio turned itself on. From the radio station, it was on to static and turned itself all the way up and then back down again. Now it's the next day, and the little girl I babysit keeps apparently telling her mom that she had a friend here named Jeremy. Nobody here is named that, and I realize after talking to her today that she is not saying Jeremy, she's saying my mom's name. I don't know much about demonology, but I do know that sometimes demons pretend to be angels to get what they want from you. Any input or opinions on this would be greatly appreciated. Story 6. This took place in my apartment in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. It was almost 7 p.m., and I had to go get my boyfriend from work at 8. I planned on cleaning and finishing the laundry for the next 45 minutes, so I put in my headphones and started cleaning. I was listening to a song called Demons by Tech Nine, which really isn't a demonic song. You have to understand that artist to understand his music. Anyways, I bent down to pick up one of my kids' toys, and as I was standing back up, I saw, as clear as day, a very obese white man with a white shirt and dark shorts just sitting in the corner of my hallway outside my daughter's room. I only saw him for a split second. I even second guessed if I was seeing things, but it was just too real for me to conclude that it was just my imagination. I grabbed my daughters and we went to get my boyfriend from work early. I was freaked out, but not too scared because the man didn't really look scary or threatening, and he wasn't doing anything but sitting there. About 2 hours later, my boyfriend and I are laying in our bed, and my daughters are sleeping in their room next door. As I'm telling my boyfriend about what happened, all of a sudden there was a boom and all the power cut out. This woke my daughters up, and my boyfriend went out to investigate. What happened was that the breaker had tripped, and the box was wide open, and the breaker box was in the exact spot that I saw the man sitting earlier. This freaked my boyfriend out. We basically just laid in bed the rest of the night. No sleep at all. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.